Hello, and welcome to the second annual Ingenious Game Awards, my made-up award show where I talk about some of my most standout titles of 2018, just like every other YouTuber who has ever existed and ever will. Remember, this is my own personal list, so don't get yourself in a huff if I happen to miss your favorite. I wouldn't huff you if you were the last man on Earth! Unlike last year, early access titles are fair game, because I've simply played way too many awesome ones to exclude them. So with the introductions out of the way, it's time for the list to begin. Most striking visuals. Cuphead is one of those games that, if you showed it to your grandma or somebody else who's pretty ignorant about games, they'll talk about how wonderful that cartoon looks. It's the kind of game that shows up once in a generation and, although it doesn't necessarily innovate anything, everything it does is executed exceptionally well, especially the art. It also happens to be a fun game, and while I found the gameplay immensely satisfying on its own, some of these bosses and their themes are going to be with me for quite a while. Best Roguelite. It's pretty easy for a roguelite to grab my attention, but also saying you're a Metroidvania is a surefire way to pique my interest. Unfortunately for Dead Cells, the Metroidvania side was pretty much a lie, but that doesn't stop it from being a fast-paced, action-oriented roguelite game with satisfying combat and fun weapons. Although each run can last a decent chunk of time, it's all too easy for Dead Cells to get you trapped in that one more run loop for hours. The Franchise Isn't Dead Award. Bubsy! I'm just kidding, it's Samus Returns. Metroid fans have been ignored for a long time before 2017 came around and dropped Metroid Samus Returns on our laps. A reimagining of Metroid 2 that doesn't just give the story a new coat of paint, but also redefines how 2D Metroid titles play. Although I'm not a huge fan of Samus Returns, with my reasons elaborated in painstaking detail in my feature-length comparison between all three Metroid 2 titles, I'm excited about what it could mean for the future of one of my favorite franchises. This game at least proves that Nintendo still cares enough about Metroid to give us a new game, even though they might not care enough to develop it themselves. Best Strategy. Empires of the Undergrowth is a game that takes so much inspiration from one of my absolute favorites, Dungeon Keeper, and meshes it with my fascination for insects. I loved it last year when its alpha demo graced our presence, and I loved it this year when it hit Steam Early Access, and I'm confident that I'll love it next year or the year after whenever it's completed. There's just something immensely satisfying about leading an army of ants towards war and sustenance. Just Enough Salt. After Lords of the Fallen, Deck 13 decided to try again to make a Souls-like game, and what came out was The Surge. A sci-fi take on a popular genre, but with all of the depth and mechanical mastery that you've come to expect from a game like this. The problem is, though, that The Surge is filled with design missteps that include attacks that force you into way too long attack animations, untelegraphed enemy weaknesses, and progression systems that are only almost really good. There were many times where I almost wanted to quit because of its jankiness, but I didn't because that would mean the game wins. But by the end of it all, I couldn't say that I didn't enjoy my time with The Surge, and that's why it wins my Just Enough Salt award. Best Open World. The experience that you can expect when you take The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild and boil it down to one simple word is exploration. It's taken that feeling of, ooh, what's that over there? And refined it into a potent drug that you'll have trouble stepping away from even after half a dozen of hours of straight playtime. And it's all held together by a simple yet satisfying movement system. Although I've gone on record saying that this game is absolute rubbish as a Zelda title, due to how it completely throws out most of the elements that defined the franchise from the first game onward, Breath of the Wild stands out as one of my favorite open-world experiences of not just 2017, but of my entire gaming history. Best Metroidvania. Tiny bugs in a massive world, what could possibly go wrong? Hollow Knight came towards the beginning of the year and delivered not just a stellar Metroidvania experience, but possibly the largest Metroidvania ever made. My own 100% run clocked in at about 27 hours, with many other people reporting about 40 hours for their completion. With a massive world, a strong atmosphere, and a surprising attention to detail, Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania for the history books. Most spectacular failure. Lawbreakers is a game that I had a decent amount of excitement for before it launched. It left a very positive impression on me during its free beta weekends leading up to its release, only to trip on its way out of the gate by getting less players during launch than during the beta periods. That's a special kind of failure that's pretty rare to see, so take it in. I did really enjoy Lawbreakers, but in the months since it came out, Lawbreakers has struggled to peak over a couple of dozen concurrent players, and it seems like even a free-to-play transition won't save this train wreck of a game. Best Roguevania. Where Dead Cells fails at being a Metroidvania, a robot named Fight succeeds at everything it sets out to be. This game is a true example of what it means to be a roguelite and a Metroidvania at the same time, and ends up being a satisfying experience where every run feels like you're playing a route and item randomizer in Super Metroid. It also happens to be one of my biggest surprises of the year, as the game that proved to me that, yes, the Roguevania does exist, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. Most disappointing. Like No Man's Sky from last year, but luckily nowhere near the same scale, Victorum is a game that looked very promising in its pre-release media. What was shown was an incredibly powerful mage with the power to summon meteors and level towns, and it all looked very satisfying and very flashy. But what was delivered was an unoptimized mess with a few shallow gimmicks backed up by needless complexity, boring combat, and uninspired landscapes. It's such a shame too, because I'm still waiting for a game to come around that could make powerful wizards feel awesome and kinetic and dangerous, but while still being a fun game underneath it all. Unfortunately, Victorum was the very definition of all flash, no substance. Best Challenging Platformer. Edmund McMillan just won't stop creating good games, and his newest one is called The End Is Nigh. It's about a blob trying to find a friend in the post-apocalypse and dying a lot along the way. But you don't care, because you don't play difficult platformers for an endearing story. You play them for the mechanical mastery that they force upon you as you progress through the world, finding secrets, collecting tumors, and fitting yourself through the tightest holes imaginable. The tight movement and perfect predictability of every obstacle in this game made it an absolute joy to play. Most popular game that I didn't play. When a game blows up in popularity like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds has, you don't just simply ignore it, unless you're me. My friends have played it, my peers have played it, my coworkers have played it, and it's helped launch and bolster the entertainment careers of many people on Twitch and YouTube in a way that probably won't be seen again in a long, long time. What I initially saw as a fad has become something much, much bigger, and its explosion means that 2018 will probably be the year of battle royales as many developers try to chase PUBG's success. Most wholesome experience. A year of gaming wouldn't be complete without at least one story-driven walking simulator with minor puzzle elements, and Rime fits the bill. The game is gorgeous and has a nice heartfelt story behind it that really doesn't hit you until you reach the end, but it hits hard. Not a game I'd want to replay, but Rime was a memorable experience that left me with more feels on my way out than I was expecting or even prepared for. Prettiest piece of poop. Sundered is a Metroidvania with a large emphasis on procedural generation and Lovecraftian themes. The game looks outstanding at a glance, but the boring procedurally generated hallways, unmemorable locations, and poor combat balance drags the whole experience down. This is a game that I tried really hard to like, but had to put down after just 5 hours due to a combination of boredom and frustration. The boss fights, however, were pretty spectacular to both play and watch, and it's just a shame that I couldn't stand the rest of the game to get to them. Best movement. What's the one thing that you do more than anything else in just about every game that you ever play? You move around. Running, jumping, driving, it doesn't matter how you move, it needs to be done. But if the movement is fun, engaging, and responsive, and if it has depth that the developers embrace when designing the game can be elevated to greater heights than you would ever expect. That's the case with Mario Odyssey. Its amazing movement systems, combined with a tendency to reward you for exploring it rather than making you bonk off of an invisible wall, means that there's a lot to explore and discover, and it's always fun to go out of your way to do it. Most Spoopy. Whoever named 2017's Prey should probably be fired, because it shares a name with a not-so-well-known shooter from 2006, but without sharing anything else but the genre that they live in. As surprising as that fact might be, what surprised me more is just how immersed I got into this game and just how much it wriggled its way into my head and found ways to keep me on edge. I never finished Prey, but some of the spooks and the environment and the creatures and the effect that they all had on me and my gameplay is a feeling that I won't be forgetting for quite a while. Most addicting. Slay the Spire is yet another roguelite in this video, but this one changes it up just a little bit, and instead of having anything to do with action, you're playing cards instead. Yes, I know, something Hand of Fate 2, but even that has some action involved. Slay the Spire instead has you selecting cards from your hand and spending energy to attack the enemy and defend yourself from its retaliation. And you build your deck of cards one at a time as you progress through the game. It's a style of game that I never expected to draw me in quite as much as it has, but it's proven itself addicting and I can't seem to get enough of it. Missed opportunities. Here's a few games that I missed this year but really wanted to play. I've played a few hours of Neo, but life and other games have gotten in the way. I still want to go back to it and experience the rest of the game because the first two areas that I played through were an absolute joy and hinted at a much deeper game than what I saw. I don't remember much of Nier on the PS3, other than the fact that it was really weird but really fun. Combined with the fact that Nier Automatopoeia has been nearly universally praised this year, it's definitely on my wish list. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 looks like 10 different kinds of stupid and ridiculous, but I enjoyed the first game enough to want to try out the second. It's entirely possible that if I had played this game, Breath of the Wild might not have won the award for Best Open World. I've heard great things about Horizon Zero Dawn, and I'm hoping that I can eventually find the time to play it. And now for my Game of the Year! Hollow Knight as a game is hard to top. It's filled with charming characters, adorable yet at the same time disturbing visual design, incredible bosses, responsive and satisfying combat and movement, and an attention to detail all the way down to explaining nearly every game mechanic with an in-world reason. Hollow Knight isn't just my favorite game of 2017, but it's my favorite Metroidvania ever for a first-time playthrough. Because of its length, though, Super Metroid remains as my favorite one to replay, but that doesn't diminish Hollow Knight's achievements. From a Kickstarter success to a commercial success, Hollow Knight is a game that I'm consistently excited to revisit every time new DLC appears, and I'm eagerly looking forward to the rest of it in 2018. There you have it. There's no denying that 2017 has been a pretty great year for gaming, in spite of the obvious negatives. Star Wars! And with so many great titles having been released throughout the year, I'd be surprised if you didn't find at least one that you loved. So grab that game by the hands, look into its eyes, and tell it just how much you care. I hope you're looking forward to 2018 as much as I am, so have a happy new year and keep on gaming.